we're now going to tie a bead head pheasant tail nymph. And so similar to some of the other flies that we are demonstrating in this series, I like to start off by pinching the barb of the hook down. And especially for beadhead flies, that's important because not only for the safety factor in using it for making it faster to release the fish or to unhook it from us, when you're dealing with a beadhead fly, we've got a large diameter hole and a small diameter hole. And when we put the point of the hook through there, if we've pinched the barb down on the hook, it makes it easier for the bead to slide up to the eye of the fly. And then again, when we mount the hook in the vise, we want to have the shank of the hook approximately parallel to the top of the table. And for these beadhead flies, I like to add just a small amount of lead-free wire to the pattern to help hold the bead in place and also add a little bit of additional weight to the fly. So I've put 5 or 6 wraps right there. I pinched the wire, and now I can wiggle it, and the wire will break right at that pinch point so that we don't have to use our scissors to cut the wire. And then we'll wrap the excess bit of weight right there and push it up under the bead, and now we can add our thread onto the fly. And so we'll do that by the jam knot, which just makes a few spiral wraps forward, come back over the top of those, and the wraps back over the top will lock that in place. And so we've now added the thread to the fly without physically making a knot. And then we take this excess bit of thread called the tag end, we trim that off, and we're ready to proceed with the fly. And then what I like to do is I like to work with about this much thread so that I can control where the thread goes, and then we'll lay down a base of thread on the hook shank, come up over some of the weighting wire, and we'll make a little ball of thread behind it so that that wire doesn't shift. And then we're going to bring the thread back, and you notice how I can move the thread now just by rotating my wrist a little bit. It saves a lot of motion. If you're working with larger lengths of thread, you have to make bigger motions, and we want to avoid doing that. So we're back to the point where the shank of the hook begins the bend, and that's where we're going to tie in the tail. And so for this fly, we're going to use a pheasant tail feather, and you see how on this side we've got these nice kind of rusty brown tip to the barbs. That's what we want to use for tying this fly. The material on this other side would not be the color that we want for this fly. And so what we'll do is we'll take these barbs and we'll pull them out to the side, and we're going to want to grab approximately 8 to 10 barbs. Pull it to the side so that that evens up the tips, and then we'll take our scissors and we'll trim those right along the stem of the feather. And so we're going to stroke the barbs together so that we've got a nice little clump. And you see how right there we've got about the same length as the hook shank. And so I want to make it just a little bit shorter. I like my nymphs' tails to be between about 1/2 to 3/4 the length of the hook. And so right here we're about 1/2. And when I transfer this to my other finger and bring it down here and tie it in place, I'm actually going to add just a little bit of length to the tail as we do that. So you'll see if I take my scissors and measure this off, that's now the length of the body, that's the length of the tail, and so we're between 1/2 and 3/4 of the length of the body. And so I'm going to go ahead and put a few wraps, I'm going to back this up right here, and another wrap right there, and I'm going to do this to lift the tail. So all we did was we made a loop of thread underneath the tail and then bring that up. And before I wrap things forward like I tried to do, I have to remember that we want to add a little bit of the copper wire that is going to be a ribbing. And so we want to tie that in right back here. We'll put that wire in along the hook shank, and I hope you can see that the wire is underneath there. And I'm going to lift these barbs up and wrap that down along the shank, and then have my thread right up here where we will stop the abdomen. And so I'm going roughly half the distance of the body up for that. And I'm going to now take this excess bit of pheasant tail, and if we were doing this for a show fly, we'd actually consider whether we wanted to trim the tail and get fresh barbs for fishing flies and stuff. I go ahead and use this remaining material so it's less handling. And so we made one wrap behind, and then we're coming forward and we're just wrapping these barbs around the hook shank to create the body of the fly. And so now we've came right up behind the end of that wading wire, and I'm going to put a couple of locking wraps, and I'm going to move this copper wire back out of the way just so that you can see that's not something we have to fight with. And we'll put 3 or 4 locking wraps there, and then put a wrap in front and come back in another wrap right there. And since this is a bead head version, then we can go ahead and trim the fibers off at that point. Now this is one that because of all that clump of barbs, we're going to counter wrap the copper wire. So instead of wrapping this over the top away from me and stuff, I'm going the opposite direction, and I'm creating spirals of the copper wire going forward. And what that does is it will help trap all of those barbs down, and it gives us a little bit of segmentation on there and actually protects the underbody, so that if one of those barbs gets cut, the whole fly doesn't unravel. And now, similar to some of the others, we'll pinch the wire, and then we'll wiggle and get the wire to break at that pinch point just by wiggling it, so we don't have to use our scissors. Now we're going to take some peacock curl, and because of the length of the peacock curl right here, usually what happens is you'll have a place here where it's weak, and so we'll grab the hurl partway back and snap, and that'll cause it to break at that weak point so that it doesn't break when we're tying the fly. And then we'll come back and lay that over the top of the hook shank and lock that in place. And now I'm going to bring the thread right up behind the bead. And now all we're going to do is we're going to take this peacock curl, and we're going to create the thorax of the fly. And you see how the hurl is kind of flaring and creating a little bit of flashy color and thickness. And we'll put a few more wraps. And now we can go ahead and take the thread. We do the locking wraps right behind there. And we can trim the hurl, and I apologize for having my hand in the way. Do that. Now we bring the thread and put a few more wraps right behind the bead, and we're now ready to finish off the fly. And I like using a double hitch knot, where I'll bring a length of thread, I'll put my finger right here, and put 1.5 wraps behind there, take the loop, one thread over the bead, the other underneath. And if we do 3 of those double hitches, then we've got the fly tied off and ready to be finished. Other people prefer to use a whip finish. Some like to use single hitches and stuff. That's a matter of preference. And you know, at this point, With the uni thread, I've never found that I need to use head cement. However, if you want to add a drop of head cement to help fuse the thread fibers together, then that's perfectly acceptable. And what we have here is a finished beadhead pheasant tail nymph. You'll notice that for this one we have a black bead. It also is commonly tied with copper beads, sometimes with gold bead. When I'm working with crystal clear water, I don't necessarily want all of the extra flash that you get with the gold beads, and so this is something that the black bead is particularly effective when the water is very, very clear, and also for later on in the season when the fish are getting a bit more spooky. And you can see that was all it takes to make a very simple, very, very effective fly.